Welcome to Be Provided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa. Here are your hosts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Be Provided Conservation Radio. Our conversation today is one of many, I hope, to have in the next few weeks discussing human-wildlife conflicts around the use of rodenticides and educating all of us to find better solutions to live humanely with our wild neighbors. Our guest today is Tai Moses. She's the director of the Santa Cruz chapter of Raptors Are The Solution, a Berkeley-based nonprofit that educates people about the ecological role of predators and the dangers they are facing from widespread use of rodenticides or known as rat poison. She is also the author of the memoir Zooburbia, Meditations on the Wild Animals Among Us, and that was published by Parallax Press in May 2014. So I have not read your book yet, to be honest, but I'm really looking forward to it. It has received great reviews on Amazon, and it looks like it was a recommended read by Oprah. So congratulations and welcome to the show, Tai.
Thank you, Marcia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to say, and I think it's an important conversation for all of us to have. So before we get started, I was hoping you could share a little bit about yourself and, hear a story or so how you became who you are today as an author and urban naturalist.
Well, that's such an interesting question. I think I'm still in the process of becoming who I am, but I've always been drawn to animals, and I grew up in Los Angeles in the middle of the inner city, and even there's always wildlife, no matter where you are, really. In urban areas, people these days are surrounded by all kinds of animals, from raccoons and skunks to even apex predators like mountain lions in certain parts of the city. So I was always interested in natural history, and I read everything I could get my hands on. I loved Aldo Leopold and Conrad Lorenz. I especially loved narratives that told a story, and so as I got older, I tried to think of ways I could combine my interest and love for animals with good stories, and I tried to put as many of those stories as I could into Zooburbia. Yeah, when I started writing Zooburbia, I was living in Oakland, and I lived just a few miles from downtown Oakland at the very foot of the foothills, and I started to notice every time I looked out my window, I would see wildlife. And it dawned on me that I was seeing the same animals over and over again. I was seeing the same flock of wild turkeys, the same deer with one antler missing, the same opossum with half a tail. And I watched these animals, and they really began to seem like my neighbors, my wild neighbors. And I didn't feed them. I mean, they weren't pets, but they were definitely a part of the daily life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I live up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I have a mama deer and her young baby deer who I've seen grow up, from spring till now, and it's fun to have the same family of woodpeckers coming through, and
right.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and you really begin to see that these animals are individuals, that they have personalities and they have stories.
I think it's great. So can you tell us more about, what is the organization of Raptors Are The Solution, and how did you get involved with that?
Well, Raptors Are The Solution is a nonprofit that's based in Berkeley and has chapters in various cities, and I started the Santa Cruz chapter a couple of years ago when a few things happened kind of all at the same time. I loved watching the red-tailed hawks that live in the canyon across the street from me, and around that same time, I saw a poisoned rat in my neighborhood. It was clearly poisoned. It was staggering around, and it was bleeding from the nose and mouth. And I also had noticed that my local feed store was selling rat poison. So I put it all together and realized that these poisoned rats posed a terrible danger to the red-tailed hawks that I loved so much. and I went to the feed store and asked them if they would consider taking these products off the shelf, and they told me that they weren't the bad kind, quote, that these were okay and that they killed only rats. And so I knew that wasn't true, but I started to do more research, and I got in touch with Raptors Are The Solution, and they have an incredible amount of material to help people who are interested in this issue, flyers and brochures and all kinds of great material, educational material. And I used some of that to start talking to people in Santa Cruz about rat poison. And I found that most people really don't know that rat poison is hazardous to wildlife. There's just a lot of confusion about rat poison right now. And since the EPA banned one class of rat poison for consumer use in 2015, most of the public, reasonably enough, thinks the products on the store shelves must be safe. And the pest control industry is capitalizing on this confusion using misleading advertising and fear-mongering. And if you go into the Home Depot or Ace Hardware and you look at the rat poison packages, you'll see pictures of smiling kids and happy dogs to make you think that, oh, these must be safe to use around my pets and my kids, when in fact they're not. There's no such thing as a poison that kills only rats. In fact, there's no such thing as a species-selective poison. Such a product has never been invented. You just cannot remove one species without endangering many others.
Wow.
Well, what they did was they banned what's called second-generation anticoagulants for consumer sale. In other words, you or I cannot go buy them in the store, but pest control professionals can still use them. That's the loophole, and they use them in abundance now. And the first-generation anticoagulants are the ones that we can buy. The difference between these two is that second-generation anticoagulants can kill a rat with only a single feeding, whereas with first generation it takes multiple feedings. But either way, even if the rat up to a week to die. So they return to feed on the bait many, many more times during that week, growing ever more sicker, building up a super toxic dose. So by the time an animal, a coyote or an owl or a hawk or your pet cat catches this rat, it's a toxic ticking time bomb. It's ingested many times the killing dose, and it's certainly enough to kill an owl or a hawk.
Yeah, that's really sad. And, I've seen a couple of bobcats crossing Highway 1. Well, it might have been the same bobcat, actually, but it's pretty thick. And, and it takes a while for a bobcat to die from this as well.
Exactly.
It's a suffering death, too. It's very terrible.
Long, agonizing death by internal bleeding. So what you're seeing when you see those sick bobcats is they're suffering from a disease called notoedric mange. It's a parasitic skin disease which is caused by exposure to anticoagulant rodenticides. And it's believed that the animals become susceptible to mange because of their weakened immune systems. They lose fluids and nutrients through their skin, which leads to infection, starvation, and eventually they do die. They're often hit by cars. And we've had these sick bobcats showing up in Santa Cruz for several years now. It's a real problem, and there's also really no local or state agency that can or will help them. It's just, again, because rat poison is legal, it's a strange kind of thing that they fall between the cracks. It's really the tragedy of the commons.
Oh, that's really sad, And I do volunteer. I'm getting molested by my cat here. Speaking of cats, let me put her down. She needs attention.
I have my own cats who are clawing at my leg right now.
I know. She was just headbutting my earbuds out. I apologize. So, anyways, she's obnoxious. So, I was gonna mention too that I have volunteered for several months and hope to continue, but at a wildlife rehab center. And, we've gotten several this summer, unfortunately, several turkey vultures coming in with rat poison. And probably 50% of those vultures we were able to rescue in time and get them rehabilitated. But, so I guess I just wanted to mention that if people do see a sick animal, too, that it's possible that they can get help, but that's not the solution overall. We need to ban the poison. But
right, we need to ban the poison. But you're absolutely right that if we're able to capture and get these animals into care in time, many of them can be cured if they have ingested, if they're suffering from secondary rodenticide poisoning from anticoagulants. And the animals who are at risk, of course, are the ones who eat the most rodents. And who doesn't eat rodents, right? Birds of prey like owls and hawks. We've got predators like foxes, bobcats, coyotes, weasels, gopher snakes, and the scavengers like raccoons and skunks and opossums, ravens and crows. All of these animals are best allies in the effort to control rodents, and they're also most at risk from threat of secondary poisoning.
Wow. Yeah, I was just talking to the snakes, the snakes people as well, and we touched on that topic as well for snakes. So it affects everything, and you know, I live up in the Santa Cruz mountains, and there's still a little bit of rebellion, but I think it's more along the lines of what you said is people need to be educated. I think the stores where they're buying some of these products, like you said, are telling them one story, or maybe the person coming in to do the pest control is telling them one story, and so they go by that, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
People often ask me, well, what can we do to stem the flow of rat poison into the food chain? And you're right. The answer really is education, because once people realize that they're poisoning the rodent predators, they want another solution. And there is safe, effective, non-toxic rodent control that doesn't endanger wildlife or pets. In fact, it's really, it's what we've known about for years, really, is that improper sanitation is almost always the cause of a rodent infestation, and that usually means garbage. Wherever there's edible garbage, there will be rats. So we always tell people that keeping dumpsters closed and garbage bins tightly closed is one of the keys to controlling rodents. If you remove the food source and you exclude the rodents from, say, your home, find out where they're getting in and seal up those holes, you will permanently solve the problem.
Right. Yeah, when we first moved into our home, it took us a good, summer season or so, but, plugging up the holes. What do you recommend for that? We use some of that expanding foam or... Yeah,
the expanding foam, I've had good luck with that. Some people say the rats will chew it off, and maybe that's true. There's also a product called Stuff It, which is meant for closing up these holes. You also want to trim back foliage around your home, like maybe 2 feet. You don't want any branches touching your house, because rats will use those as bridges to get onto your roof and find their way in.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to, if you have sort of holes around pipes maybe leading in, you want to use Stuff It or maybe 1/4-inch hardware cloth. And you have to use permanent solutions. People sometimes just stuff some aluminum foil in a hole, but that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It really pays to take the time. As you said, it took you a whole summer. And it can be time-consuming to find all these little holes, but it will pay off because you will have long-lasting rodent control. This process is called rodent exclusion or pest proofing, and it's the time-honored way of solving a rat problem. But many pest control professionals don't even offer it. They'll show up to a home and they'll just sell the homeowner a contract for refilling bait boxes every month.
Wow.
It's a very lucrative business model, but it doesn't do any good to get rid of the rats in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, that's harsh. Yeah, we also started putting up some owl boxes, which...
great. That's great. Do you have owls yet?
Not yet. We just put them up this summer, and and we're going to be talking to some people about owl boxes hopefully in the next week or two as well. So
wonderful. I absolutely. Yeah. If you live in owl habitat, barn owl habitat, putting up an owl box is one of the most effective things you can do, because they are pound for pound. The barn owl is the most voracious predator of rodents on the planet.
Oh, really?
They consume more rodents than any creature on Earth. I think, a single wild barn owl eats about 4 rodents a night, and that adds up to more than 1,400 a year. And if you have a family of nesting barn owls, they can eat anywhere up to 4,000 prey items in a single breeding season.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So they've been our most valuable partner since the beginnings of agriculture more than 10,000 years ago. We need them, and increasingly they need us because they require cavities to nest in, which is usually holes in dead trees. But in our urban and suburban areas, we usually tear down dead trees right away, so these birds have nowhere to nest. So by placing barn owl boxes around our homes or in park locations, we can encourage these predators to hunt in the general area.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's good to know. I'd rather definitely have owls around than poison, that's for sure. So
yeah.
I don't know for sure if we have barn owls. I assume so. I do hear great horned owls often, and I've seen screech owls here as well. But that's amazing. I didn't realize they could eat up to 4 a night for their size.
Have one of the highest metabolisms of any bird of prey, so they need to eat a lot.
Wow.
They themselves don't weigh very much. I think a full-grown barn owl weighs about a pound and a half, but they have to eat quite a bit. Yeah, we do ask that if people put up barn owl boxes that they first try to make sure that none of their neighbors are using poison. We recommend a mile poison-free radius if possible.
Yeah, we're working on that. We have our immediate neighbors now not using poison. We kind of educated them, mentioned that their pets are going after rats as well. Their cats, their house cats that they let outside and they could get sick.
We on our website, raptorsarethe.solution.org, we have dozens and dozens of free downloadable flyers that people can use that say things like raptors nesting in this area, please don't use poison, and so we recommend that people go download those and print them out and put them up, and it's a great way to start a conversation with the neighbors and also let them know that you have great horned owls or screech owls in your neighborhood and that you need to be careful.
Right. And I know there's a lot of like-minded people listening to the show, so I'm hoping every now and then we catch those who are just learning and share this information with others if you can. If you already know this, please share with others. So besides educating, putting up signs and owl houses and rodent proofing, how do you go about educating people? What are you doing in Santa Cruz as far as getting the word out?
Well, one of the things that our group does is we present what we call Owl Awards, our Owl Wise Leader Award, to any business that agrees to either stop using rat poison or stop selling rat poison. So that can be fun. We've presented a couple of those Owl Awards. The one that I'm the most excited about was we presented one to William Owl I guess it was about 6 months ago.
Oh, nice.
And he owns a huge warehouse complex on the west side called University Business Park. And I noticed that it was, it had those black plastic bait boxes all around the perimeter containing poison. And the building is located very close to Antonelli Pond and Wilder Ranch, wildlife habitat. So I went to him and I told him about the dangers of rat poison, and he immediately agreed to get rid of the poison. And he's very concerned about wildlife, and he really had no idea that he was doing something that could endanger animals. And so he had the poison removed and swapped out with traps. So those boxes are still there, but they now have snap traps in them, which is a much safer way of controlling rodents, as long as those snap traps are placed in boxes where they can't possibly catch any non-target animals. Right.
That makes sense. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, and I do go on various properties and I do see those black boxes. So is there a way to tell if they're a poison box or a trap box?
They're almost always poison boxes.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, and by law they have to have a label on them which says, if you look at them more closely, the label will have a check mark next to the type of poison being used. So our communities are just blanketed with these bait boxes, and they're behind restaurants, they're behind grocery stores and shopping centers and warehouses, and they're even near sensitive habitat like our river downtown and across the street from parks and open space. So we put a lot of time and effort into protecting these open spaces, but we don't we don't realize that there's a danger right around the border of them, and that animals don't recognize these boundaries and they cross the street, and rats cross the street. So if a building is using bait boxes and it's across the street from the wildlife area, that's going to endanger all of the animals who live and hunt in that area. I know that up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, there's a lot of people have a lot of problems with wood rats. Rat is a native animal. It's not a pest species. It's actually a keystone species that's critical to the health of the ecosystem because they build these incredible lodges, and that provide shelter for many other types of small animals. And they're herbivores. They eat seeds and nuts and they eat leaves. But they do occasionally chew their way into someone's car and make a little nest, or they build a little nest in someone's barn. But they really are more beneficial than they are harmful. But I know that people are using poison to kill wood rats, which is it's incredibly sad because also wood rats are the prey of owls, particularly spotted owls, which are threatened. So whenever people poison wood rats, they're also poisoning spotted owls.
Yeah, that's really sad. Yeah, so I think we have some wood rats on our property, like off into the back part of our property. You see these big kind of grass, domey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, hut, the little shelters, and something's living in there, so those must be wood rats. So,
yes, and they're just fascinating little animals, they're also called pack rats or trade rats.
That's where that comes from.
Yeah, I know that they can be difficult for people who are cultivating marijuana because wood rats will chew on the stalks of young marijuana plants as a source of sugar and water. So people who are growing cannabis should fence in their plants very well. You have to put the fencing down into the soil so animals can't dig under it also. But, unlike pest non-native rats, wood rats don't reproduce in great numbers. They only have a couple of babies a year. They're also strongly territorial. So it's really pretty easy to control them with physical barriers. So we really ask that people never use sticky traps, glue trap, tanglefoot, because that's just a horribly inhumane product, and it also often catches animals like songbirds or baby rabbits and snakes and lizards, and these animals almost always have to be euthanized.
Yeah, we've seen some of those come through at the Wildlife Rehab Center, unfortunately. Yeah, it's really sad.
They're indiscriminate killers.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. And you can get those pretty commonly, right, at the hardware store.
They're everywhere, and they should never, ever be used.
So you are going out and you're talking to people and getting the word out.
Yes, certainly. We talk about education. We talk about how rodents, natural predators, will work very hard to keep rodent numbers in check, but we have to do our part. We have to ensure proper sanitation. We have to use exclusion. We have to use snap traps and halt the use of poison. And, really at its heart, this is a consumer issue. If enough of us refuse to buy rat poison or hire anyone who does, the industry will have to evolve to serve the demand for non-toxic rodent control. Mm-hmm. And there are some signs that this is happening, even though it's happening at a glacial pace. There's a new product that I'm very excited about called ContraPest. It was just registered in California for use this year after being tested in the New York City subway system. It's not a poison. It works by targeting the reproductive system of rats. They eat the bait for a few days, and it renders both male and female rats infertile. They cannot reproduce. It doesn't kill them. It doesn't harm them. And any animal who eats them is also not harmed. So there's no risk of secondary poisoning. It's really a remarkable product. It's birth control for rats.
Yeah.
And since rats breed so quickly, this is really the best way to reduce a population of rats.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. That's great.
It's brand new. We can't in the store. Only professional pest control operators are licensed to use it. But I just talked to one the other day, and he told me that a lot of his clients are asking for ContraPest. They're using it, and it's working really well.
Oh, that's good to hear. So do you find that if people do ask their pest control people, the company that they're working with, to use something like that they might be willing to try?
Yes. They have to ask for it, though.
Yeah.
It does
they have to know to ask
a little bit more than traditional poisons cost, but it works better, and it will work in the long term also. So this particular pest control operator I spoke to, he recommends using contrapest along with snap traps to reduce the population of rats more quickly. Say if you had a restaurant or something like that, where it's really critical that you reduce your rat population. So they would use contrapest, which is used inside of bait boxes, and they would also set traps in the interior of the restaurant.
Are you the only one in the Santa Cruz chapter that
I am
forging
I
away?
am pretty much the only one. There are a couple of volunteers who help with distributing material, but it's pretty much a one-woman show. Would love to have some help. Yeah. We have a pretty active Facebook page, and people are wonderful about sharing things on Facebook. But I sometimes wonder how much that translates to real-world action,
I agree. It's hard to say. I think, I share any posts. I think you posted an owl on a doorstep last week. Yeah, that was a great horned owl, I believe.
That was very sad, a great horned owl in Morgan Hill.
Yeah.
Now, that was a tragedy, but one silver lining, if you can call it that, is that Morgan Hill is trying to now go poison-free, and they are working on this issue, and they are really, I think, really activated. So,
good.
The death of that owl was really so horrific, and so many people saw that. There's a wonderful group in Morgan Hill called WORK, the Wildlife Education and Rehabilitation Center. So they are leading the charge down there to educate people and to ask their city council to pass a resolution condemning rat poisons.
Good. That's great to hear. Yeah, I usually don't like sharing bad news like that, but I think in this case, I know people need to know. This is one of the things where, like you said, it is a consumer issue, and I think they need to see that, and not necessarily see it, but understand what's going on. And sometimes the visual helps in a way, unfortunately. Yeah. There's
a lot of disagreement about that. When I started the Facebook page for the Santa Cruz chapter of Raptors Are The Solution, I kind of made a pledge that I would not post disturbing photographs. There are a lot of them out there of animals affected by rat poison, and they're very grisly and horrible to see and unforgettable. And, so there's a school of thought that says that people have to see these photographs, and maybe they do. I personally don't want to see them more than once.
Right.
And, they're out there. If you want to see them, all you have to do is Google wildlife rat poison, and you'll find them. But, it's important that people know that stuff happens.
I agree with you, too. I know I do not, I get involved with a lot of cheetah conservation and elephant conservation, and I refuse to post those grisly pictures of, things going on. I try to share a more positive spin, but I think people like it is. And I think with people like us, though, who are involved or, we know what happens and we can already visualize it. We don't need to see that, but
there are people maybe who do need to see it. So it is hard to know what to do.
Yeah. It's sad. But thank you for doing all that work. And I hope you can get some volunteers. And have you gone to city council at all to talk to them?
I have not talked to the city council, but I've talked to the county supervisors, and they were very supportive. And in fact, they passed a resolution last year condemning rat poison and asking people not to use it. So that was a victory. I think nearly 30 cities and counties in California now have passed these resolutions. They're basically, they're non-binding resolutions that condemn the use of anticoagulant rodenticides and ask citizens to use non-toxic methods. Now, the reason that we adopt these resolutions is because we cannot legally ban rat poison on the local level.
Right.
There's something called preemption laws, which means that a city cannot ban something that is legal in the state or, say, legal on a federal level. So there's movement afoot to change that, but for now, all we can do is pass these resolutions and educate people.
Yeah, that's great. Have you seen, you mentioned that things are moving at a glacial pace as far as change in the positive direction and more and more people getting educated. Have you noticed anything in particular with Santa Cruz, area and the area that you've been working with? It sounds like there are some changes that are positive that are happening. You gave some good examples, but are you seeing more and more of that as you're doing this more often, I guess is what I'm asking.
Not particularly locally. I haven't seen anything, but in other places, I think in Ventura County, for example, they conducted a 2-year study, and that found raptors are more effective at stopping rodents from damaging levees than anticoagulant rodenticides. So that study has been widely circulated, and it's the first of its kind study that found birds of prey are better than poison at controlling rodents. It sounds revolutionary, right?
Yeah,
we've always known that, but
right.
So the word is getting out.
Yeah.
So other municipalities are now interested, and they want to replicate Ventura County's efforts. They want to find out what they did. They put up raptor perches, they put up owl boxes, and they were able to attract these raptors to breed and nest and hunt and control these ground squirrels, these burrowing ground squirrels that tend to damage levees.
Oh, yeah.
So that was very exciting.
Oh, that is. Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, good. There are some changes happening, and I hope that we do get some listeners to get more involved. And as I mentioned, in the next couple weeks, I hope to be talking to more people about this.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and humane ways of working with our wildlife and coexisting with them.
Yeah, it's an international problem. We've posted dozens of studies on our website that show exposure to anticoagulants in different species all over the world, from bobcats in Southern California to raptors in the United Kingdom and in Spain, and barn owls in British Columbia, reptiles and amphibians in New Zealand. It's just so widespread, and it all suggests that rat poison is the DDT of our times.
Wow. That's really sad. So I've never heard of any cases with humans. It has to, if you become in contact with it, I would assume could make humans sick as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. But, the human exposure is really limited to children who directly ingest rat poison by eating it, say, because these pellets are flavored, of course, to attract rats. They're flavored with chocolate and peanut butter.
Oh, my
God.
God.
This generally happens to poor kids in low-income neighborhoods where they'll find a box of it and think it's cookies, and they'll eat some of them. And then they get sick, and they're rushed to the ER. I don't know of any deaths, per se. I think they've always all been caught in time, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's something like up to 10,000 kids a year are sickened by directly eating rat poison. So I don't know if you hear my dog barking.
Yes.
Arrow. That's enough.
It's not that loud.
She's barking at the UPS man.
Oh, she is?
Yeah. So,
us and our pets. Yeah.
Up to 10,000 kids a year visit the emergency room because of direct exposure to rat poison. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty high. Yeah, and I can see it being in more urban areas as well.
Right.
But yeah, holy cow. So I know we talked about a lot of solutions. Do you have any other recommendations how people can get more involved with this or other things, or do you feel like we covered some of those topics?
I think we've covered some of them.
Yeah.
I always ask people to speak up, to talk to their neighbors, to start a conversation, to talk to the business people they frequent, your favorite restaurant. If you see those little black boxes around the side of the building, ask them, tell them that poison is only killing the predators who are our best allies in controlling rodents. A lot of people really don't know. I met a man just a couple of weeks ago when I was tabling at an event, and he just stood there and he looked at all the material and the brochures and the pictures, and then he said to me, "Do you mean to tell me that the rat poison I use outside my buildings is killing owls and hawks?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sorry to tell you that is true." he was shocked, and he told me that he manages shopping malls in San Jose, and that all of them have rat poison around them. And right there in front of me, he pulled out his cell phone, and he started going about the process of getting rid of that poison. He just never knew.
Wow.
And so it really showed me that education really does work. So right now he's trying to get the bait taken out and replaced with contrapest.
Oh, terrific.
He doesn't want to be responsible for killing wildlife. He loves owls. He loves hawks. And he's horrified that he was unknowingly contributing to that. So, education is just so critical, starting these conversations. If people hear owls hooting in their neighborhood, go on Nextdoor or Facebook and post that, hey, we've got great horned owls here. Please don't use rat poison. Start the conversation, speak up, talk to your neighbors. And I really think that would make a huge difference.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and that's something, that all of us can do easily enough. So.
Exactly.
Yep. Wow, that's a powerful story, though. I mean, this person just happened to go by your table, and he operates, sounds like, several locations, and so he could be pretty effective by just making that change.
Right.
That's great.
Shopping malls are one of the biggest users of rat poison. They just they'll hire an exterminator who simply comes every month and fills up the boxes, and they write the check, and it's just considered the way you do business. But we now know that this is not the best way to do business.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're right, too, that education is the key, and people don't mean to do harm. I think the majority of people, the more talking I do, it's easy to get angry and say, oh, people are ignorant, but they're not. I mean, they just need to be educated. They don't mean to be harmful. The majority.
I agree. I think that's really true. The majority of people do not want to harm animals.
Yeah.
There are a few jerks out there, but generally speaking, people don't want to harm animals, and they want to do the right thing. And having rats or mice in your house is a real problem. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's really important that our message of keeping wildlife safe has to come with education about how to safely control rats. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the rats in our house were very troublesome. They were chewing, some wires in our computer room, and
nobody wants that.
No, and we don't want to hurt them either. Yeah, so so we spent a lot of time finding holes, crawling under the house, and plugging them up, and we've been rat-free for a year at least.
Oh, that's wonderful. You mentioned that you were going to talk to Rebecca Dimtrick, I think.
Yes, hopefully on November. November.
Oh, that's wonderful.
4th.
Her business has been incredibly successful because that's exactly what they do. They crawl around and they find those little holes, and she'll tell you her stories, but she has a wonderful method of she'll put a little bit of non-toxic, colorful dye on a rat that she catches in a house, and then she'll let it free back outside to prove that it won't find its way back in,
Oh, interesting.
It's almost like to test her work. So ask her about that.
I will. Yeah, I hope to talk to her next week, and I hope to talk to her husband as well about the owl houses. Yes.
Great. Yes. They just do such wonderful work.
Oh, that's terrific. And I agree. I was talking to Rebecca as well, and I know that fall is the time. There's kind of an urgency, to get some of this information out for fall, I would think, because now is the time to get owl houses up. That's when they're going to start looking for owls or, nesting areas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and rats and mice are looking for warm, dry
places
themselves. So they want to get out of the cold just like we do.
Exactly. So I'm hoping I can do a series of these interviews coming up and get the word out there for the fall at least and keep it going. Yeah.
Thank you so much for helping to spread the word.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. So I appreciate it. So one last question, and we kind of touched on it in a way, Nate, but, I always ask people, what gives you hope? Like we mentioned earlier, there's so much negativity out there, and there's so much good work going on. What is there any one thing that gives you hope to keep doing this work you're doing? It's not easy,
It's not easy.
Yeah.
I think Just things like the man I mentioned, the shopping mall manager. When I'm able to see the work being effective in that way right in front of me, it really gives me a lot of hope, because it would have been so easy for him to just turn and walk away.
Yeah.
Because it's very inconvenient for him to change. You know, no one wants to change. It is so hard to change human behavior, and that's what all of us who do conservation work of any kind, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change human behavior. We're asking people to be more careful, to change their habits, to use a different product, to do something differently so that animals aren't harmed. And that can be inconvenient for people, and people don't like to be inconvenienced. So when we see people taking the trouble and saying, yes, I will be more careful, you know, or no, I will not use poison. I refuse to use poison even though I think it's convenient. So that does give me a lot of hope. And I do see more of that than people refusing to change. I see more people saying, yes, I want to help.
Oh, that's great. So,
thank you so much, Marcia. Thank you for doing this wonderful podcast.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio.